one since everyone wanted my headcanon facts. Here they are. So I'll get to it in a second. So yeah, enjoy. The first engine that arrives on Sodor is Edward, my headcanon. Not Thomas, not Neil. It's Edward in 1897, the year after he was built. And he is still on Sodor, but he runs tourist trains from Wellsworth to Brendam Dock. The next two engines to arrive on Sodor are Toby and Lady. Lady, so she could shunt until Thomas comes, and Toby to help out on a branch line in 1903. Well, yeah. So, long story short, Toby's on his old line. The Fat Controller, well, not the Fat Controller, but the manager of his line purchases Henrietta, and they become strong friends. They're not wife and husband or whatever you want to call them, but yeah, that's what Toby is. And Lady's an interesting one in my headcanon, because she helped out with shunting around Knapford. Sorry about the noise. She helped out with shunting around Knapford until Thomas came. Then she went to help Toby on his line until it closed in 1943 during the war. The next engine to arrive is actually Thomas, but he arrives with two coaches on accident from the LBSCR because a tree fell on his track and no signals warned him that the track was switched to the wrong way. Oh, crap. Never mind that. So he worked at Knapford Yards with Lady for a time, for about 6 months, and his coaches were used on the Express with Edward, since Edward was the prime express engine at the time instead of Gordon or whoever. So Thomas eventually, after helping James didn't have his big crash in 1925. No, in my headcanon, he had it during World War II. But we'll get on to James in a few minutes. But Thomas had his coaches, Annie and Clarabelle. They weren't called Annie and Clarabelle at the time, but they were the LBSCR coaches that Hornby used for Annie and Clarabelle. If you know what type of coach they are, can you tell me in the comments, please? Because I forget which type of coach that is, but I know it's from the LBSCR. Anyways, Thomas helped out Lady for a time, blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah. And then the Fat Controller purchased the entirety of Toby's line in 1953, 10 years after Toby's line closed. And Toby's old line was the entire Farquhar branch line. But the quarry had collapsed in 1938, and that was part of the reason why Toby's old line closed. Next engine to come to Sodor in my headcanon was just a Ginty, a faceless Ginty. Now, this could be wrong, but it comes in 1915? Yeah, 1915. Because Thomas was a prototype of an E2, of the E2, and a Ginty was needed on Toby's line, And I actually have a little picture of what the Ginty looked like. But Lady didn't have cowcatchers and side plates. Only the faceless Ginty and Toby did. Here is what the Ginty looked like. Okay, so I don't feel like making an edit of Eagle, but just pretend that James is Eagle. So the next engine to arrive was Eagle to help out on the main line with just goods work with Thomas, and Eagle was a very powerful engine, so the Fat Controller kept him as long as he could until 1950, when Eagle had to go back to his railway. Long story short, Eagle was basically, in the early days, Murdoch, if that makes sense. Like, he's the most powerful engine in 1917. Yeah. Eagle was a very powerful engine, blah, blah, blah. But he often mentioned that he missed his brother. Well, not really brother, but a dear friend named James. Yeah. And that's Eagle in my headcanon. It was just a plain and simple 812. Just to help out with goods and passengers. Yeah. It was faceless, too. Next engine to arrive in my headcanon was actually Henry. Well, the Fat Controller got scammed, and, well, Henry was just there. He arrived in 1921 in my headcanon, and yeah, that's all I have to say. He's just there. He was just there through everything. There's not two Henrys in my headcanon. It's just one who left in December of 1935 and arrived back in January of 1937 after following his crash with the Flying Kipper. But he actually landed in a snow-covered ditch. Snow-covered rocky ditch. That's how he got very damaged. Yeah, that's Henry in my headcanon. The next engine to arrive in my headcanon is Gordon. Yeah. Gordon, he arrived in 1923 and was painted in LNER green. He kept that until World War II. Yes, he kept that until World War II in my headcanon because there was no space for him in the works to be repainted yet. So, he had a huge derailment in World War II following a bullet getting stuck in one of his side rods, causing it to jam up at a high speed on a curve. He flew off the rails, and that derailment had 57 casualties, 193 injuries, and 7 unhurt on his express that day. He came off the rails at a high speed at around 67 miles per hour, flew off the rails, and got pretty damaged. He rolled out of the works with a new, after World War II ended, in blue. Yeah.